11.
Okay, fine, very good. Right.
Johnny, did you get that?
Yeah, I did. We'll see you disappear. You can catch the last 15 minutes or so on the or half an hour on the thing. So I want to first of all share this screen with you because this is something that's happening tonight. It's an event which is being put on by an organization called Mavoi Satum, which means a dead end in Hebrew. And it's an organization which helps women who are in an aguna situation. They are a very prominent organization in Israel who have achieved tremendous things in this field by campaigning and getting gittin for women who have been chained where men have refused to give a get. There's lots of things going on with this that I got involved because they wanted some kind of halachic input, and there are many ways of halachic solutions which are available to this problem. It's really a question of will as to whether the Rabbanut want to use these halachic solutions, and clearly they don't, and they're having to be forced to do so. It's an important subject. Apart from geirut, apart from conversion, in my opinion, this is probably the most serious and important problem that the Jewish people have to deal with currently, which is the position of women in society, and in particular, the Agunah society, the Agunah situation. So we have a group of people coming from Jerusalem, especially to talk to us tonight. I would really hate them to come to an empty hall. It's not being put on Zoom. It's in person only. All of those of you who can come tonight, I implore you to do so. One, because I think it's very important, and two, I think we have to show our support to these people who are doing tremendously good work in society. So it's 8 o'clock tonight. There'll be a presentation with a film, I believe, and a speech. It's not a fundraising thing. You won't be asked to give any money. It's an awareness raising event more than anything else. And they haven't ventured into Netanya before. And so I'd really like to try and get as many people as possible. Those of you who in other communities in the South Beach area or in North Netanya, if you can spread the word as well, everybody will be welcome. There's no fee to come in, and you won't be asked to give any money. So that is tonight. The next thing that I would like to show you is another event, which is going to be on Monday, which is Asara B'Tevet. Can you see that on the screen now? A flyer for that. This is a beautiful new flyer designed by Avril with a new Techelet logo on it, as you can see. We were learning in our Tanakh Shir a couple of weeks ago the prophecy of Shmuel, who says to Shaul, go down to the tomb of Rachel and you'll meet these people there. And then we said, well, okay, well, where is the tomb of Rachel? It ain't so clear. So I thought, okay, what better thing to do on Asara B'Tevet, which is the beginning of the destruction of the temple process. We know that Kol B'Raman Nishma, Rachel cries for her children, but let's just stop and ask, where does this occur? I'm going to be giving a shiur on really, basically, it's the whereabouts of the burial place of Rachel, as shown in Tanakh and various other places. A fascinating subject. Most of you will have been to Kever Rachel, but is she really buried there? That's the question I'm going to be asking. And the shiur will be dedicated to the memory of two very special ladies, my mother, Shirley Simcha Bat Zvi Hirsch, and Avril's mother-in-law, Alma Gatoff, Chava Bat Nachman, whose yortzeit is on Monday night. My mother's yortzeit is on the following Shabbos, so it's the same week. So it's going to be in their memory. And so you're all invited to that. That is a Zoom meeting. The clickable link will be sent in the next few days. but it's the usual link that you use to join all our shiurim, and it's at 8:15 Israel time or 6:15 in the UK. Hope that you'll join us for that. Okay, so let's get off that subject now. I want to dedicate today's shiur to two people. One for a refuah shlema for Marcel and Jeffrey's mum, my Auntie Leah, Leah Bat Malka, who is a little bit under the weather at the moment, and we're hoping that she will get better very soon. I spoke to her yesterday and she didn't sound too bad, and hopefully she's on the mend, but we, you know, at 103, it's always a bit precarious. So we wish her a refuah shlema and we dedicate the shiur to her. And also I want to dedicate it to the memory of her late husband, whose yortzeit is this coming Friday, the 6th of Teves. My uncle Harold, Tzvi Dov Chaim ben Reuven, who was a most remarkable man. My two grandfathers that I never had rolled into one. And I know that Marcel and Jeffrey miss him, and so do I. So I dedicate the shiur to both Auntie Leah and Uncle Harold. Right, let's do some Gemarah. It's where are we now? Let's get the Gemarah up on the screen. There it is. We are in Gemarah Sanhedrin. We're on Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. We're almost at the bottom of the page. You should be able to see the screen now. Give me a thumbs up if you can, please. Yeah, good, excellent. Right, so let's just get my screen right. So if you remember, 2 weeks ago, last week, we didn't have a shiur because I was running around like a headless chicken after my awful day. But what we have, we talked about 2 weeks ago, were the reasons why the year was intercalated. That's the subjects that we were talking about, and we talked about the animals not being fattened enough for Pesach. We talked about the turtle doves and the doves which a woman who I need to mute you all. Hang on a minute. Hang on a sec. Oh, there we go. Mute all. Yes. Okay. Right. You're all muted again now. Right. So we spoke about the animals, the doves that the woman who's given birth has to bring. And if you remember, I said that if you gave birth after Sukkot in the winter time, you probably wouldn't schlep all the way to Jerusalem, in particular if you lived a long way away, to bring your two birds. You'd wait until Pesach when you were going anyway to do the Korban Pesach. And therefore, laws of supply and demand, there might not be enough young doves, and they might need to have a bit more time to have a few more of them. And so that was a reason, a potential reason, why they might intercalate the year and make the year into a leap year. The last thing we said was that is not the case, that we do not make a leap year because of the animals. That's what we said. So we're over here on the screen here. Tanu Rabbanan, this is what we ended up with 2 weeks ago. It's the rabbis taught, Ein ma'abrim et hashana, we do not intercalate the year, lo mipnei agdayim, not because of the kids, velo pnei atlaim, and not because of the lambs, velo mipnei agozalot, and not because of the doves, shelo perchu, have not yet grown enough to fly. And that's where we stopped. Aval, but osin otan sa'ad lashana. We do use these ideas, these excuses, these reasons as a supporting factor. Sa'ad means a support. We use it as a supporting reason, and you'll see shortly as we go on and I think I mentioned it, well, I know I mentioned it right at the end of last year because I listened to it at 6 o'clock this morning when I was preparing. What I said was that there are Premier League reasons for intercalating a year, and then there are Championship or second division reasons. Second division reasons on their own are not good enough, but they can be a support for the decision to be made. So these are these things that we don't use as a first class reason for intercalating the year. What we do is it can be used as an ancillary, an extra reason, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a moment. And the Gemara straight away asks us a question: Ketzad, how does this work? What's going on here? Rabbi Yanai Omer, Rabbi Yanai says, Mishum Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, in the name of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Now, that's an important name I want you to remember, because we're going to be talking about him in some detail later on this morning. So Rabbi Yanai says, quoting Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Mahodein anachna lachon de gozalia rekivin. This is the language, by the way. This is what he's doing here. He's quoting. Rav Steinsaltz has very kindly put a little quotation mark there. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. Those of you who've got the actual sefer in front of you can probably see it. Before the word mahodein, there's a little speech mark, a little inverted comma there. This is the language that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, who was the Nasi, he was the head of the Sanhedrin. This is the language he used when announcing the extra month for the year. And he said like this, Mahodein anachnu. We are notifying hoda'ah. You know what a hoda'ah is? Hoda'ah is a notice or a message. If you get a hoda'ah on your WhatsApp, that means you've got a message on your WhatsApp. So we are notifying you, lachon de gozalia rakivin, that the fledglings, the little birds, rakivin, they are rach. What's rach in Hebrew? Tender, tender. We see that. Where do we see that word rach?
Rachamim. Rachamim.
Rachamim is not that word. Rachamim is with a chet. This is with a kaf.
Still tenderness.
It's tenderness, and there may well be a connection. Maybe the chaf and the chet are interchangeable. Could well be. David Marks is itching to tell us where we see rach. Anybody else before David tells us?
When you go and buy some cheese and you want it soft, like brie, I think that's rach.
Yeah, okay. That wasn't what I had in mind from Tanakh, but you're probably right. Soft cheese. Rach would be soft and tender, yeah. Okay, David, read my mind, David. Where am I thinking?
What Abraham and Sarah prepared for the Malachim at the beginning of Parashat Vayera, Rach Vatov. Okay,
that wasn't what I was thinking, but you're right. So you'll have to read my mind again in a second. David quoting the pasuk when the angels came to Abraham, and he ran off to fix them up a meal. Rach vatov, he gave them meat that was rach vatov, tender and good. Okay, read again, David. What else am I thinking of? A bit later on from that, not much later, a little bit later.
Yeah.
It doesn't have such a good connotation.
Maybe Rachamim.
Yeah. The fat cows.
No.
Fat cows and the tender cows.
No. He does that.
Anyone else?
Yeah, maybe it's Rachamim. Mercy.
Mercy, yeah, that's with a chet. This is with a chaf. Rach. Okay, so David, you didn't manage to read my mind. You're right in all the things that you say, but it didn't read my mind. My mind says the Einei Leah Rakot.
Rakot, yeah.
Rakot, the eyes of Leah. were described as rakot, tender, and the Mefarshim say they were red, and she was too busy crying. Why was she crying? Because she knew that she was the eldest daughter of Lavan, and she was destined to marry the eldest daughter of Rivka, who was Esav, and she didn't fancy that, and so she was crying a lot, and she got red eyes. But that's the Midrash version of it. It literally means tender eyes. And I think if you didn't have that connotation from Rashi, if you said that somebody had a Naim Rakot, that would probably be a compliment, I would have thought, to have tender eyes. I think being tender is a nice word. And it's interesting. The reason I bring that is it's a good example of the Midrash, if you like, ignoring Pshat, because Pshat there is very clear that they wouldn't use a word rakot. Rak means tender, means good, it's something nice. We've already said, David's quoted Rach Vatov, tender and good. So how do we get onto that? Yes, Gozalaya Rakivin. These fledglings, says Rabban Shimon Gamliel in his declaration, the fledglings are still tender, the imirya da arkin, and the lambs are thin. The arkin are thin. There's a little bit down here that Rav Steinsaltz brings about this word arkin, and he says that the correct text seems to be that which appears in the Aruch, where the word is de'adkin. In other words, the Reish and the Dalad have got a bit mixed up. It's very easy, a Reish and a Dalad, to get them mixed up because they look very similar. De'adkin is the Aramaic translation of dak. You'll know what dak is. All those people that go and buy their schnitzels in the supermarket, you'll see it says on there, schnitzelim dakim, means very thin, very thinly sliced. So dak is thin. So this word de'arkin is suggesting, Rav Steinsaltz, that it actually should be de'adakin, and it means thin. So Rabban Shimon Gamliel says the fledglings are tender, the lambs are thin, and now we've already said, haven't we, 2 weeks ago, that those are not good enough reasons on their own to intercalate a year. So he has to say something else, doesn't he? So what does he say? He brings out the big guns, top of the Premier League reason for intercalating a year. Vezimna da'aviva lo mata. Spring has not yet arrived. So we know, don't we, that Nisan, which contains Pesach, must be in the spring. So when we get to be the leap year, it means that we're getting to the stage where Pesach is creeping backwards into the winter. So this year, for example, is a leap year. Pesach this year is, what date is Pesach this year? Anybody know off the top of your heads? I will tell you, 1 second. Hang on a minute. Pesach this year. Here we go. Pesach.
15th of April.
15th of April. Thank you very much. There it is. Correct.
Erev Pesach.
Erev Pesach is the 15th of April.
Friday night.
If this year was not a leap year, what date would Pesach be? English date.
15th of March.
15th of March. Now, 15th of March is not spring. When does spring start?
April.
Go on, Jeff.
21st.
Well, it's the spring. It's a solar calendar, isn't it? It's the spring equinox. I think Nachum said there, or somebody, was it you, Larry? I don't know. Somebody said the 21st of March, which is correct. The 21st of March is the spring equinox, and that's when spring officially starts, on the 21st of March. So you can see that if we didn't have a leap year this year, Pesach would actually, or at least the beginning of Pesach, would be before spring. And so if I was Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel and I was the Nasi of the Sanhedrin, I would be saying this year, Zimna da'aviva lo mata. Spring has not yet arrived, and therefore we have to make it into a leap year. I don't need to do that for a number of reasons. Firstly, I'm not at the head of the Sanhedrin. And secondly, Hillel Hazaken did it all for us, because we have a fixed calendar now, which tells us exactly when the leap years are going to be.
When would Rabbi Shimon have said it?
Okay, coming to that, you might actually miss this, Johnny, because the next bit of the shiur, as we get a little bit past this next bit, is going to be about which Rabban Shimon Gamliel it was, because there were two, and when he lived. So you might have to listen to this a bit later, Johnny.
I meant when in the calendar would he have announced it?
Oh, I see. When in the calendar as opposed to when in history.
No.
I guess this would have been well before the people would have left. So if you're going to say people coming from the north or from the diaspora, it's going to take them a good few weeks, isn't it, to get to Yerushalayim? I don't know exactly when it would be, but it would be sometime in the winter, I would imagine. Probably around about Shvat time is my guess. David, you're going to tell us something?
I would suggest that if we start saying V'tein Talumata 2 weeks after Shemini Atzeret, to enable all of those who had travelled to Yerushalayim to get home before the rainy season, then the same 2 weeks should apply before the Chag.
Except that the roads will be a bit wet and muddy from the winter. It might take longer on the way there after the winter.
Which was a reason for adding the extra month. And again, just to remind you, one of the reasons I say that is that that it does talk about the possibility of what happens when a leap year is declared after Purim.
Yeah, so it's obvious that it can be declared after Purim, but I would suggest to you that that wouldn't be ideal and it wouldn't be the norm. I think that the norm would be that it would be declared before Rosh Chodesh Adar, because you would want to know that this coming month is Adar Rishon and not regular Adar, and therefore not to do Purim on the 14th. So I would say,
agree, but there are obviously instances where it did happen.
Yeah, I think that's right, but I think that's probably a b'diavad, probably a situation not ideal, and I think that they would probably make this decision sometime in Shvat, because it would need to be near enough to know that that the fledglings are thin and the lambs are thin and all that stuff, but far enough away from Pesach that they wouldn't have already left, and preferably before, well before Purim as well. So my guess is it will be sometime in Shvat, probably towards the end of Shvat, that they would, generally speaking, make that announcement. That's from my own logical analysis. I haven't actually read that somewhere. I can see David in the background busily looking stuff up. Hopefully he'll come up with something in a few minutes. Yes, Michael.
Could it be anything to do with when you have to make the donations to the temple and the notice you have to give before Pesach?
Ah, that's interesting, because we're going to come to that in the next page.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, very good. We are going to come to that in the next page. That's one of the reasons that we talk about very shortly. So hang on in there, Michael. Hold that thought, as they say. Right. So the Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, we are notifying you that the fledglings are tender, the lambs are thin, and it's not yet reached the time of spring. Ushafarat milta ba'anpai. Okay. V'shafrat milta. Milta means the thing. The thing is shapir. Do you know what shapir means?
Sharpened. Sharp.
No, shad is sharp.
Okay.
Shapir means good. It's good.
Proper, no? Proper.
Proper, good and proper, yeah, that's right. So shafrat milta, the matter is good or proper, but anapai, in my eyes. Now, pay attention to what I just said and what it actually says there. The matter is good in my eyes. Va'osifit al shata da tlatin yomin. And I have therefore added, osif, same word as musaf, yeah, additional service, musaf, same word, va'osifit, and I have added al shata onto the year, this year, tlatin yomin. Taf and shin are interchangeable, so shloshin, you know what shloshim is, 30. I have added on 30 days. Now, let's say the whole thing that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel said. He said like this, we are notifying you that the fledglings are tender, the lambs are thin, spring has not yet arrived, and therefore the matter is good in my eyes, and I have added 30 days onto this year. That is the statement of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel when he made the decision to intercalate the year to make it a leap year. Okay, nice and clear. Okay, we've got a main reason. The main reason is the spring, and we've got a couple of extra reasons, the fledglings and the lamb. Let's carry on. Mitveh, the Gemara asks a question. It doesn't like what it's just heard. Kama ibur hashana. How many days, how long, how much, kama, how much is a leap year, ibur shana, pregnant year? How much is a leap year? In other words, how many days do we add on? Well, we've just said it, haven't we? What did Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel say? It's good in my eyes, and I have added on tlatin yomim, 30 days. So why is the Gemara asking a question? It's just said it. So the Gemara says, really? Is that right? How many days is there in a leap year? I mean, how many in a leap month? How many days extra do we have? 30 days. But then the Gemara quotes another quotation from Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, who says, Chodesh, a month, not 30 days, a month. So what's the difference, folks? One says a month, one says 30 days. Yes, Michael?
1 day.
What's a month?
The difference is 1 day, that's all.
Okay, but what is a month in Hebrew? How many days in a month?
29.
Ah, exactly, 29. So that's the question of the Gemara. We have one quotation of Rabban Shimon Gamliel, which we just said, that when he makes a year into a leap year, he adds 30 days. He just said so. Look, Shatada Talatin Yomin. This year I'm going to add on 30 days. Now, over here, we've got another quotation from the same person who says we add on a month. And a month is not 30 days. A Hebrew month is 29 days. It's only 30 when the Sanhedrin see fit to add on another day. And standard minimum month in the Hebrew calendar is 29. So we've got, coming to you in a sec, Leon, we've got now a machloket between Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel and himself. How are we going to get around that? Okay, Leon, before we give you the answer.
Just to tell you that you haven't got this text on the screen.
Oh, I beg your pardon. There's me putting my arrow everywhere and you can't even see it. Right, there you are. Thank you, Leon. So over here, we said, here, I will add on 30 days. And down the next bit, question of the Gemarah, quotes another Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. There are two Rabban Shimon Gamliels, so it could be that one said one and one said another. It isn't, by the way, but there you are. He says, Chodesh, meaning 29 days. So that's the question. We've got a question of what was Rabban Shimon Gamliel's opinion? Was it 30 or was it 29? How many did they add on in Adar Rishon? The extra month that they put in, how many days was it, 30 or 29? The answer is a bit disappointing, really. Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa answers the question. Ratzu Chodesh, Ratzu Shloshim Yom. They could do what they want. Sometimes they put on 29 and sometimes they put on 30. How was it decided? It was decided on the testimony of the new moon. So they'd work it out when they thought this the new moon of the previous month was going to be, and they'd work out whether they needed 30 or 29 days. And over here we've got a halacha. Here the court may decide to add a standard month of 30 or a short month of 29. Nevertheless, this is relevant only for distant communities which rely on the notification from the court in Jerusalem. In Eretz Israel, the length of the intercalated month is determined by the observation of the new moon and the testimony concerning it, as in all other months. This is in accordance with the statement of Rav Papa. So Rav Papa is saying that it all depends on the witnesses that come forward. Now, so there we are. That was a little bit disappointing to me, that answer. I thought we were going to have a much cleverer answer than that, but nevertheless, that's what we've got. Now we're going to come to an interesting little digression, because we've mentioned Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Now, in order to do this next piece of Gemara, we need a bit of background. There were two Gamliels. There was Gamliel and Gamliel II. Okay, let me just unshare the screen with you and get another screen up. Here we go. So the first Gamliel lived at the time of the Second Temple, while the Second Temple was still in existence. Okay, his son was called Shimon ben Gamliel, and he took over from Gamliel the first as the head of the people in the time of the temple. His son, the son of Shimon ben Gamliel, was Gamliel. Okay, Gamliel II. Gamliel II was the first Nasi of the Sanhedrin after the destruction of the temple. He lived through the destruction of the temple, and he was the Nasi of the Sanhedrin. This is Gamliel II. Okay, he was the first Nasi, the first president of the Sanhedrin after the fall of the second Beit HaMikdash in 70 CE. And he was initially in the Gamliel, and where you go and see the Mishnaic villages in the Gamliel, that was at the time of Gamliel II, and his son, who was Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel II, because Gamliel's father was also called Shimon ben Gamliel. his son, was also Shimon ben Gamliel. Are you with me? Yeah? Okay. So this is the second Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. So he was in charge in a place called Yavne. Okay. Gamliel the second took the center of learning from the Galilee to Yavne. Now, who was it? See if you can remember this. Who was it who said to Vespasian at the time, just before the destruction of the temple, who was it that said, "Ten li Yavne v'chachameha"? Give me Yavne and its chachamim. Can anybody remember which rabbi it
Ben
was?
Zakkai. Rabbi Ben Zakkai, who was taken out of Jerusalem under
Yes,
questionable circumstances.
correct,
Question.
Sharon.
Questions.
Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the one who said to Vespasian, "Give me Yavne and its sages," and that's what he did. Gamliel the second was he moved to Yavne during the siege of Jerusalem, and he became the successor of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Gamliel the second. So that's the father of our Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel that we're talking about now. And Yavne was his base, and he made Yavne into the center of spirituality, the center of learning, and allegedly he is buried in he's buried there in Yavne. I'll just show you a picture of his alleged tomb. There it is. For those of you who can see it there. That is the tomb of Gamliel the second in Yavne. And as you can see what it looks like? If I didn't tell you that that was the tomb of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, of Rabban Gamliel, and I said, whose tomb does that look like? What would you say? Avril?
Kevarochel.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Same dome.
Same dome, same kind of structure. If we go and have a look, if we have a look at that picture, there's our poster. Can you see the poster? If you have a look, there's the picture that Avril chose to put on the poster. That's an old picture of Kevarochel. It's not dissimilar, is it, to the tomb of Gamliel? And there's a reason for that, which I'll tell you in a minute once Jeffrey's said what he's got to say. Yes, Jeffrey.
The picture of Gemarah was the structure that was built or rebuilt by Sir Moses Montefiore. That is much later architecture. In fact, the picture of the earlier picture, which bears a likeness to it, is different architecture altogether. It has a pointed arch, and the pointed arch is a definite Arab arch.
Okay, let me just get that back up. Where's the pointed arch there?
So the three arches at the entrance there is pointed. It's not a semicircle.
It's not.
They're not semicircles. Now that is a later type of arch. It came into Europe in the Middle Ages. The Arabs had it earlier, but it's not from the Second Temple era.
Okay. That well may be. I just want to
similarly the dome is also goes to a point which bears out the same theory.
Okay. To get off that 1 second. Okay, so that's interesting, because all of these things will have been rebuilt over the centuries. If you go to Kevarochel today, you've got a foot thick concrete all around the place because it's in a dodgy area. So that's been added to it and added to it and added to it. So it's interesting. But the point that I wanted to make was just that Gamliel was in Yavne, and I came across that picture, and it just struck me as being similar to our picture of the Keva Rochel. But I see what you're saying here, that the looking at the dome, it's a flatter dome, and looking at the arch, it's a flatter arch. I can see that now that you've pointed it out. But it's interesting, isn't it? You've got a dome over presumably over the tomb, and then some other buildings. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Right. There it is. Okay. So let me just go back to the Gemarah now. Right, there we go. We're back on the Gemarah. This is the Rabban Shimon Gamliel we're talking about, is the second Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. It's important that you understand that for the next piece of Gemarah. So this is Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel the second, whose father Gamliel the second was the Nasi after Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Okay, now over here, we're right at the bottom of page 11a. We're about to turn over the page. It doesn't happen very often in our shiur, so we can have a celebration. Ta chazei, come and look, come and see, my ikar, what there is. In other words, what difference there is. Bain over the page. Takifa'ei kadma'ei le'invavtanei batra'ei. Difficult words, these. Let's just see if we can get them. Kadma'ei. What word can you see in the middle of that? Leon?
Kodem.
Kedem. Yes, kedem. Okay. Where have you seen that word kedem apart from on your grape juice?
Mikedem.
Okay, mikedem, what does that mean?
Days of old.
Ah, good. Kekedem, yeah? At the end of V'nucha Yoma, Hashivenu Hashem Elecha V'nashuva Kadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Ke is like, Kedem is days of old. In other words, previously. And that's what it means here. Come and have a look, says the Gemarah, what difference there is between the earlier Kadma'ei, the earlier authorities, Takifa'ei. Takifa'ei means stern or harsh or haughty, depending on how you look at it. Come and have a look, says the Gemarah, at the difference between the previous generations, which were thought to be haughty and stern and harsh, le'invatanei batra'ei. What word can you see in the middle of there? Le'invatanei. Any offers? What might the root of that be? Anyone? David?
Anav.
Anav. What does anav mean?
Ah, great. Great.
Humility.
It means humility, humble. Moshe Rabbeinu was called Anav Mikol Ha'adam, the most humble person of all. Anav is humility, humbleness. Good job, Michael. Leaf's not here. There's no such word as humbleness. It's humility. So the Gemarah is asking us to compare the previous generation, which was thought to be stern and harsh, to the later generation, which was thought to be humble. Okay, now at first glance, what we're going to see now is actually counterintuitive. And we have to concentrate hard to understand this. And he's bringing in as an example. So he's saying, look here, the earlier generations were very harsh, and the later generations were thought to be humble. But is it really the case? Let's have a look. Tanya was taught in a Braita, Maaseh Rabban Gamliel. There was an incident with Rabban Gamliel. Shahaya Yoshev al Gav Ma'ala Bahar Habayit. He was sitting, Yoshev, al Gav Ma'ala, on a step. Ma'ala is something that takes you up, okay? He was sitting on a step, Bahar Habayit, on the Temple Mount. Now, which Rabban Gamliel are we talking about here? Are we talking about Rabban Gamliel the first or the second? And how do you know? I want you to tell me, is it the first or the second? And I want your reasoning for it. Yes, Jeffrey.
It must be the first because the temple was destroyed. The second temple was destroyed when the second one was around. The Sanhedrin didn't have the second temple.
Correct. So why is that the first? Your reasoning is correct, but your logic is incorrect. It's the second one for the same reason you said. You're absolutely right. The temple was destroyed, and that's why he was sitting on a step. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been sat. He would have sat outside on the step or on the floor on Har Habayit. It doesn't say in the temple. It says on the Temple Mount. He's at the site of the destruction of the temple. Okay? So the reasoning is correct. There was no temple, and that's why he was sat on the step. We have a look at this little P over, this little N over here. Here we go. Look at this, top right-hand corner of the screen. Al-Gav Ma'ala Bahar Habayit. Although this incident took place after the temple was destroyed, Rabban Gamliel wanted the intercalation to issue from the closest possible place to the site of the temple, since, as the Gemarah explains, intercalation should be done from the abode of the omnipresent. If the temple had been in existence, Jeffrey, he would have been doing this declaration from inside the Lishkat Sanhedrin, where the Sanhedrin sat in the courtyard. He wasn't. He was sat on a step on Temple Mount. And that tells us that it was after the destruction. So Rav Steinsaltz asks the questions and says, well, what was he doing in Jerusalem? He could have done it from Yavne. And the answer is he wanted to be as close as possible to the place where it would have been done had there been a temple. So he was on Temple Mount. But it must have been the second Rabban Gamliel, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, because the first Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel would not have been alive at the time when the temple was destroyed. Okay, so your reasoning was absolutely right there. So here's our Gemara. It says this was a story. He was sat on a step on Har Habayit, on Temple Mount. V'haya Yochanan Sofer, the Yochanan the scribe, Omeid lefanav, was standing in front of him. V'shalosh igrot chatuchot lefanav munachot. Shalosh, 3. Igrot, what's an igeret?
A pamphlet.
A letter or a pamphlet, yes. So there was 3 documents here. Chatuchot. If you ask for something in your cheese shop, who said something about the cheese being tender? It was you, Leon, wasn't it? Leon's frozen. Okay, I think Leon said something about cheese being tender. Well, if you go into your cheese shop and you ask for a piece of cheese, there you are, Leon, you're unfrozen now. When you go for your brie and you want your brie that you were talking about before, and you would ask for a piece of brie, you might ask for a chaticha, a piece. This is the same word from chatuch, means to cut out. When you do a brit milah, then, or when I do a brit milah, not you, you shouldn't be doing those things. But if I do a brit milah, you do something called a chituch. Chituch is the cutting. So here, this scribe had 3 pieces of presumably parchment, 3 documents ready cut out, lefanav munachot. They were set before him. In other words, imagine the scenario. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, the head of the Sanhedrin, is sat on Har HaBayit with the official court scribe, and the scribe has 3 documents at the ready. And this is what Rabban Gamliel said to him. Amar lo, he said to him, Tul igarta chada, take 1 letter, 1 document, and write the following. Uchtov, and write this. La'achana b'nei glila'ah, ila'ah. La'achana, to our brothers. You can see the word ach in there, yes? This word here, you can see ach, brother. To our brothers who live, where's this place? Gila'ah, ila'ah. Where's that? It's a place. What does ila'ah mean? What's aliyah? Going up. Okay, so it's upper. And glila'ah?
Gamliel Elyon.
Yes, Galil Elyon. Correct, Marcel. This is the Upper Galilee. Glila'ah ila'ah is Aramaic for the Hebrew Galil Elyon and the English Upper Galilee. So Rabban Gamliel says to the scribe, the first of your 3 letters, I want you to write the following. To our brothers in the Upper Galilee, Ula Achana, and to our brothers, B'nai Gilila'ah, Tata'ah. What's that?
Lamata.
Sorry, Leon?
Lamata.
In the lower
Lamata.
Galilee.
The Lower Galilee, correct. Who lives in a block of flats with underground car parking? Hands up. Quite a few of you. Okay. Leon, you don't have underground car parking. You have yours, Jeffrey. You have underground car parking. And what does the underground car parking called in Hebrew? Anybody know? It's called. It's called tat karka'i.
Yeah.
Tat karka'i. You should know that, Marcel, from your building days. You must have built underground car parks when you were.
As far as I remember, Tat Karkai is also a manhole, an inspection hole.
May well be, but it's definitely an underground car park. It's called Tat Karkai underground. So a manhole would fit. Anyway, so it's under. So you can see that word tata'a. So he says, to our brothers in the Upper Galilee and our brothers in the Lower Galilee, Shlomchon Yisgeh, may your peace increase. In other words, I send you greetings of peace. This is an official document. Mohodi'in anachna. We are informing you. Again, that word hoda'ah, that notification. We are informing you or notifying you, lachon, to the fact, dizman bi'ura mata, that the time for destroying the tithes has arrived. This is what you were talking about, Michael, before. The time for destroying the tithes have arrived. La'afrushe ma'asra mi ma'atana dezeita. It's time to separate your ma'asrot, your tithes, from the vat of olives. Okay, that's the first letter. Now, what's he talking about? He's saying that in the 7-year cycle of tithes, in the 4th and the 7th year, there was a certain time that you had to destroy all the produce that you had failed to give the tithes of. If you separated tithes and failed to give it to the Kohen or the Levi, there comes a time, and that time is Erev Pesach. That's what you were referring to, Michael, I think, that the tithes have to be got rid of. It's called bi'or. Where have you heard that word before? Bi'or?
Well, that's the intercalation, isn't it?
That's ibor.
Biur Chametz, the Erev Pesach.
Yes, bi'or chametz, the destruction of the chametz, the burning of the chametz. This is the same thing. This is bi'or of the tithes that you should have given over to the Kohen or the Levi or the poor person, or you should have gone to Jerusalem with it if it was Maaseh Sheni. All those tithes which you failed to act upon properly, you've got till this particular time to get rid of it. And the first document, the Rabban Gamliel tells the scribe to send, and note, he sends this to the Galilee, and he specifies what kind of tithes? Olives. Why? Because that's where they grew the olives. That's where all the olive groves were, in the north, in the upper and lower Galilee. Go up there today, place is full of them, full of olive trees. So he's sending a message to the farmers of the upper and lower Galilee. It's time to sort your tithes out, folks. And the VAT, this ma'atana, have a look on the right-hand side where my thingy-majig is here. The VAT referenced here is a utensil, much like a large bowl, in which the olives would be stored before they were pressed. The olives would become softer in the vat, which would allow the oil to flow out more easily in the olive press. You know yourself, if you leave vegetables of any type out in a bowl, they're going to go soft. They're not going to be hard anymore. Well, when it comes to olives, you want them soft because you're going to squeeze them to get the oil out. So all these olives, which they've gathered, and they're ready to be squeezed and get the oil out of, if you haven't taken your tithes properly, you've got to do this process of biur, of destroying the tithes that you should have taken. And this document that Rabban Gamliel was sending out was to tell them that it's time to do that. Now, that was number one document. I know we're just about up in time. Let's just try and get the three documents out.
Johnny, I'm confused. Why are we destroying as opposed to sending it down to the temple? I've missed something.
No, you haven't missed something. It's too late.
Yes, I have.
It's too late. The year's up, and you can't use the produce unless the tithes have been given. And at this point, it's too late. You've only got a certain period of time to do that, and you've missed the boat. You're
so
right.
You can still use the remainder of it once you've thrown away, just to show that you don't benefit from having missed the date.
Correct, and that's what we do today. That's what we do today, isn't it? When I go into my garden and I pick off my my first grapefruit or orange or something, I slice a bit off and I say a bracha, and I say this constitutes my ma'aseh and truma, and I wrap it up because it has kedusha. And then when it's rotted a bit, I can then throw it away. I can destroy it. In the olden days, I would have given that to a Kohen, but I can't do that now because the Kohen is not in a state of purity to eat it, and it has kedusha. So this was a similar situation. That act that I just described to you that I do enables me then to go and eat the rest of my produce.
And what if you give the amount that would be equal to a tithe of your crop in your yard to Leket Yisrael? Would that be any way of making the tithe into something acceptable so that you could eat the remainder of your crop?
That would do for Ma'aser Ani. That would do for the tithe of the poor person. There are different tithes. You've got Ma'aser Rishon, first tithe, which goes to the Levi. That has kedusha and cannot be given to a Levi today because we don't have the tahara. That has to be destroyed. You have truma, which is to go to the kohen. That's in the same category. And then you have maaser ani, the tithe that you must give to the poor people. That for sure can be given to Leket Yisrael and would be a good thing to do. but it doesn't absolve you of the Maaseh Rishon and the Truma that has to be taken from produce. Now, when you go into the supermarkets and you see the Tu'udat Kashrut on the vegetable section there, you might be thinking to yourself, why do I need a Tu'udat Kashrut in the vegetables? There's no meat here. There's no, I don't need to see how it's shechted. It's a pepper or a cucumber or whatever it is. The answer is, if you look carefully at that Tu'udat Kashrut, it will tell you that the tithes have been taken according to the halacha, and therefore this produce is okay to eat. That's what's going on here. So that was the first letter. Let's just quickly go through the second, and then we'll come back to it next week, please God. So then he says, V'tol igar tachada, and take another of these three letters, number 2, and write the following: La'achana b'nei Deroma, to our brothers who live in the Darom. Where's that?
South.
South. The south. Darom is south. If you go on Kvish Shesh Darom, you're heading south. So our brothers who live in the south, Shlomchen Yiskei, peace be to you. May your peace increase. Mohodina nachna lachon bizman biura mata. That same message. It's time to get rid of your tithes. But this time it doesn't tell them about olives. He tells them about something else. La'afrushe ma'asra me omrei shibolaya. It's time to take your tithes from the piles, the omrei, omer, the omer, you've heard that word. Omer is a pile, the pile of shibalaya. Where have you heard that word before? You don't need a very good memory to know that.
Wheat.
Yes, wheat. Where have you heard that word shibalaya, or word very similar?
Pharaoh's dream.
Yes, Pharaoh's dream in last week's parsha. Sheva shibalim, 7 core ears of whatever it was. 7 stalks, that's right. So Rabban Gamliel is telling the northern folk it's time to do your tithing business on your olives, and he's telling the southern folk it's time to do your tithes on the wheat stalks or grain stalks, whatever it was. Why? Because that's where grain was grown in the area of Judea, as opposed to the Galilee where they grew olives. Now, let's just do the third one, because this is really what we're talking about. This is the most important one. And the third letter, he tells the scribe, he says like this, write this, La'achana b'nei Galvata beBavel, to our brothers in the Galut. Can you see the word Galut there in the middle of that? Galvata, yeah? To our brothers in the diaspora in Bavel, in Babylon, because that's where they were. Remember, they'd all gone off to Babylon. Ula'achana de b'Madai, and to our brothers in Media. Where do we know Madai from in Jewish scripture?
Purim.
Purim.
That's right. Paras u'Madai, Persia and Media. Achashverosh was the king of Paras u'Madai. So to our brothers in the diaspora in Bavel and in Media, Ulashar kol galvata de Yisrael, and into the entire Jewish diaspora, he's writing a letter to them. Shlomchen yiskei yolam, may your peace increase forever. Interesting that I've only just noticed it. The others, he just says, may your peace increase. To the Israelis, he just says, your peace should increase. To the people in the diaspora, he says, may your peace increase forever. Don't know why that should be. I've only just noticed that. I have to think about that. Anyway, he's sending them a notice. Listen to the notice he's sending them. I'm letting you know that the fledglings are tender. And the lambs are thin. v'zimna da'abiba lo mata, and the time of spring has not yet come. V'shafra milta ba'anpai uba'anpei chaverai, and it is good in my eyes and in the eyes of my chaverai, my colleagues, my friends, my colleagues. V'osifit al shatadat yamim tlatin, and I have therefore added in 30 days. Okay, I have added in 30 days. So, what is going on here? What's the difference? This is one of those spot the difference pictures. You know, the spot the difference. You've got two pictures of a house, and there are 10 differences, and you've got to spot them. Here, we've just said this whole business was introduced by the statement, come and see the difference between the first generation, who were harsh, and the second generation, who were supposed to be humble. Okay? Rabban Gamliel is sitting on the steps, and he says this. Forget the first two letters. That was just an introduction. The main thing is this last letter that he sent to the Galut. The difference there between that and what we said, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, his son, said earlier on, which was over here. I'm letting you know that the fledglings are tender, the lambs are thin, and it's not yet spring. And it is good in my eyes, and I have added on the 30 days. What's the difference between that and what his father said? Can't hear you, David. You're muted.
The first one says it's good in my eyes. The second one says it's good in my eyes and my colleagues.
Yes, there's the difference. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, the second generation, Shimon ben Gamliel, who was the son of Rabban Gamliel, not the father. He says it's good in my eyes. In other words, I'm the one making the decision. His father is more humble, and his father says it's good in my eyes and in the eyes of my colleagues. He didn't need to say that because he's the one that makes the decision. It's the decision of the Nasi. We learned that a few weeks ago. But because he practiced humility, he adds in that it was a decision that his colleagues made as well. So we see that the previous generation was more humble than the later generation. Where have we seen that in modern times? Does not every generation say, the youth of today, it's not the same as in my generation? It would seem that every generation thinks that the youth of today is not as good or as humble or as appropriate as it should be as the previous generations. Now, the strange thing is this expression here, come and see the difference between the two generations. We've seen the difference in the two generations. The first generation was more humble than the second. But it says, come and see the difference between the earlier generation, which was said to be stern, and the second generation, which was said to be humble. And he says, it's not right. It's the wrong way around. And with that conundrum, I shall leave you to ponder what the Gemara is talking about. And if you don't have a chance to look it up yourself, we'll go through it, please God, next week. Any questions on today's Gemara?
Yeah, was this Gemara, is this from the Babylonian Talmud?
Yes.
So why is it centered in Jerusalem? Didn't they have a Jerusalem Talmud at that time?
They did have a Yerushalmi Talmud, but this is the Babylonian Talmud, which was written in Bavel. But of course, just because it was written in Bavel, it doesn't mean that most of the events, most of the activities, many of the personalities were in Eretz Israel, as we've seen here. This was written in Bavel, and that's why it's called the Babylonian Talmud. But its contents are not even mostly about Bavel. The contents are mostly about Eretz Israel.
So what's the value of the people who were living in Babylonia when they didn't want to come back? Why don't we just stick with the Jerusalem Talmud? Because those people, as we just heard now, they're the ones that are carrying the torch of Judaism, while their colleagues in Babylonia are rejecting even coming back. What do we need that? What do we need that one for compared to this one?
That's a very good question, Nachum. And it's a question which actually has been asked many, many times through history. Which of the Talmudic bodies of thought should take precedence? Should it be the Talmud Yerushalmi or should it be the Talmud Bavli? Historically, and the reason probably being that historically we've been in exile and have had an exile mentality for 99% of our history, the reality is that the Babylonian Talmud, the Talmud Bavli, has become the more prominently thought of, the more prominently learned tractates, and the halacha it's quite interesting. The Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, is largely the basis for Ashkenazi psak, and the Talmud Bavli is largely the source for psakim of the Sfaradim.
Now, is there a similarity between, if you find something in the Babylonian Talmud, you can also find it in the Yerushalayim Talmud?
Yes, there is a great similarity. There are differences, but there are great similarities. No question about that. Okay. There are very many of the things which are in parallel, and I've said slightly differently, but are saying very similar things. It's an interesting question as to why the Talmud Bavli took precedent over the Talmud Yerushalmi. David, have you any thoughts on that?
Well, maybe guilt.
Yeah, Johnny, you could devote probably a whole month's shiurim to this topic. We've already dealt earlier on in Masechet Sanhedrin, one of your shiurim, Johnny, about the discussion about the prominence of scholars in Bavel against the scholars in Eretz Israel at the time. It would appear that there was a great deal of animosity between the two schools, jealousy. It also appears that the quality of the learning in Bavel was greater than that in Eretz Israel. Sorry?
That's subjective as well, you know.
Of course it's subjective, as we saw when we went through that particular sugya. Bear in mind that the redaction of the Bavli was a couple of centuries before the Yerushalmi, which obviously helped for it to get the preeminence over the Yerushalmi. The fact that the language in the Yerushalmi, first of all, it's a different type of Aramaic. It's far more terse. It's far more difficult to understand and to learn. The whole process of the Yerushalmi is completely different from the Bavli. It's on a different scholarly level. But as I said, you know, you could spend hours just on this topic.
Sharon, you're nodding away there. You want to add something?
Well, we have to remember that there have been huge academies established in Bavel, whereas in the Holy Land it was a mess, and people were scattered all over in the rocks of the Galilee and up in the Golan Heights. Yeah, they were trying to deal with the ruins of their civilization. I always think of this story when we were discussing in my women's Talmud class years ago about why there's a tradition among some to put salt on the Shabbat challah. And there was a place in the Talmud that discussed it, which I think just encapsulates or illustrates what was said in a more scholarly way, which is the scholars of the Babylonian Talmud said you put salt on not in memory of the sacrifice and not because it was a precious thing, but you didn't have to put salt on in Babylonia because the bread there was so good, so the challah was gorgeous, but that the bread in the Holy Land was so crappy that you had to put salt on it to make it edible. And that subjective, nasty, snarky point of view, I think, is an illustration that's fun to think about.
Yeah,
I think Sharon makes a very valid point there, because the academies in Bavel weren't subject to the same interference. In fact, they had hardly any interference whatsoever from the authorities, whereas in Israel at the time, it was very much influenced by the oppression of Rome.
Yeah, and the other thing I would just want to say about the academies is, of course, that even the academies in Bavel itself were, they were challenging one another. It wasn't that they all worked nicely together. The Pumbedisa and Surya and all these places there they had their own schools, and it was, you were very much part of one school or very much part of another school, and much like today, it was very sectarian. It's a problem that we've had in our people ever since the sale of Joseph, really, and we don't seem to be learning today. Jeffrey, you wanted to say something?
Well, I just wanted to reiterate that Bavel was relatively peaceful compared to Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael was a battlefield, and the people were terribly oppressed, and learning was almost forbidden, and people had to hide to learn. So you're not going to get the same results when you're under stress as the people in Eretz Yisrael were, and constantly, it was never ending. It was one thing after another, and then the dispersion came. So it was almost what happened in Europe. And now, sort of 70 years later, we've got more people learning Torah than ever. Now Bavel enjoyed a peaceful period. People stayed on because it was safe. It wasn't safe in Eretz Yisrael. It was a battlefield. It was a crossroads of Europe, Africa, and Asia. And all the strong powers sort of had their battles in Eretz Yisrael, and the poor people there were made to suffer. So no wonder it flourished in Babel.
Just a thought on Jeffrey's comment and yours, Johnny, is that when you look at the competition between the academies in Babylonia, and you talk about the competition and the contentiousness and the sectarianism that we're witnessing in our generation here and elsewhere, and finding it stressful and traumatic and negative, perhaps something positive will ultimately come out of it, so that we can keep this in mind, that what doesn't kill us may make us stronger. And perhaps what we're doing now as we come together for the first time in 2,000 years, maybe this is the beginning of the strengthening of our fitness and muscularity intellectually again. And maybe that's part of what Techelet is grappling with.
Amen to that. It certainly is one of the things that Techelet is grappling with. As you know, the idea of unity is something that's very important. And in the Techelet mission statement itself, we clearly state that we are non-sectarian and that we are looking to appeal to everybody across the Jewish spectrum. So yeah, thank you for that. Okay, we've done nearly an hour and a half.
I wanted to ask,
Yes.
Steinsaltz translated to English the Babylonian or the Yerushalmi. I thought it was the Yerushalmi he translated.
Both.
Both he translated?
Yeah. Yeah. You're talking about Rav Steinsaltz?
Yeah, yeah.
There's a Steinsaltz is the Bavel. I don't know if he's done Yerushalmi. I thought you meant the art scroll. There is an art scroll translation of the Yerushalmi. I don't know if there's a Steinsaltz Yerushalmi. I don't know. I have never learnt Yerushalmi Talmud. As you can see, the speed I go at, I've got enough trouble trying to get through one Masechet of the Bavli. You know, when I've reached about 450 years old and I've finished the Bavli, then I might start on the Yerushalmi. But I think I've got enough on my plate at the moment.
Oh, so he translated the Bavli.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone. Hopefully, I'll see you all tonight at 8 o'clock.
Johnny, a quick question. I'm going to be unavailable for the next 4 weeks. So how long are the recordings going to be on for?
They're on forever.
Okay, fine.
They're on YouTube. You just have to search. They're on YouTube in reverse chronological order. So newest first.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Shabbat Tov. Bye, everyone.
Is it
Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you. Yes, tonight, 8 o'clock.
Ah, okay.